Hello everyone, this is one of my authors chats of the week, and as always I'll try to give this a few minutes to start sending out notifications that I'm out and about while I keep an eye out for my co-host for the day. We'll be talking about books, writing, publishing, and everything in between. For those who've listened to these, it's pretty standard stuff. And as for me, let me see if I can send out the invite over there. Get things going really quickly. Hopefully. Hello?
Hey, I got to figure out how to turn my camera on.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Someone said explained it to me once. There's like three dots somewhere that gives you options, and one of them is to invert or turn your camera on or something like that. You would think I would know this, but there you go.
Okay,
Perfect.
so I am here, but my camera is still inverted. I was having trouble with this the last time I did a joint live, and I will try to figure this out. Otherwise, you'll just have to see me in reverse.
Hey, it's okay. Mine are almost always in reverse. I know how to do it now if I'm solo, but yes, as a group, it's kind of hard. So everybody's just gonna have to assume everything's inverted.
I'm gonna turn on my volume so I can actually hear what's going on here.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I am searching here to see if there is any way to figure out how to flip this.
Well, while you do that, I'll just kind of explain. I don't know if you've seen any of my little live chats before, but they're pretty conversational. We just talk about, again, books, writing, whatever, our interest, our inspirations. If anybody chimes into the chat with something bookish related, be it comments or questions, I usually try to point those out because if at all possible, when this platform is nice, I'll try to repurpose our chat onto my YouTube channel at a later date and put all your information down below so people can continue finding and discovering you. But since you're my co-host today, I'm going to let you kick off by introducing yourself and what you write.
Okay, well, I'm John, but my author name is JC Kang, the pen name, I guess. I've been publishing since, I believe, 2016, so this is my 10-year anniversary. If you've heard of me, then it's probably from this series here, the Dragon Song Saga. That is book one, and obviously this is in mirror image, and I can't figure out how to unmirror me. So this was a series that I released in 2016 under a different name. Didn't understand the first thing about marketing or having the right cover. It looked like a Regency romance almost, and it didn't.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, it did okay, but people kind of wanted the princess to fall in love with the dragon instead of, vanquish the dragon. So anyway, it's a 4-book series, and 2017 re-released it with new covers. 2018, all the algorithms on Amazon just sort of went wild, and I think we sold about 50,000 copies that year. It went really crazy.
Fantastic.
And then the pandemic killed my mojo, and I've really struggling to get things out now.
Yeah, I've noticed that because when I dabbled on and off with the advertising side over the years, and my original book was published also in 2016, so it's been 10 years. That's pretty cool. But yeah, I've noticed that earlier on, it felt, maybe it was just lucky, but it felt easier to get notice utilizing things like ads. And then whatever happened, all of a sudden that kind of tanked personally. I know other people do very well. Maybe it's just unfortunate circumstances for whatever I'm trying to do, but that definitely did feel like to be the case. So I've kind of backed away from running actual ads, and I'm trying to always figure out new ways, because every time I try, I might get something for a moment, but then it dies right back down.
Well, I think that the whole environment has changed. Like one of my critique partners, she released her first book in 2014, and when I released mine, she was giving me all this advice that would have worked in 2014, but by 2016, things had already changed. And so, like, I think, for example, TikTok was probably, if you were an author who got in TikTok maybe 3 years ago, then you probably would have been just rocking it now. But if you're just trying to get into it now, then I think there's like a level of oversaturation, and so a little bit harder to get visibility.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, that's the thing, was I was so hesitant for a while to join this platform just because I felt overwhelmed. I was on too many other platforms, it felt like at the time. And we only have so much time in the day to write, to promote, to, live our lives. And some of us have day jobs. Other of us are fortunate enough that this is our day job, but it's still every little bit of time dedicated to one thing or another. And joining a new platform was just overwhelming.
Hmm.
finally I did it, but I think it was right at the end of the big push for a lot of the earlier authors. And even though I have been on here for about 3-ish years and still saw some of my other authors joined around the time do, develop huge followings, I do think that was
Hmm.
kind of starting that tapering off point. And, but things change all the time.
It's a constant flux of change, and I've been same thing since the pandemic. There are several things that happened. One, I sort of like lost my author group, and sort of that kind of lost my
Oh, I'm
motivation.
sorry.
Yeah, stuff like that happens. But so I haven't really kept up with things the way I should. So I'm just right now I'm more focusing on like in person, like going to conventions
Oh,
and stuff.
fun.
That's probably where I put most of my effort when in terms of book matters. Besides writing a book that's been taking me like 2 years to. I'm nearing the end. I'm nearing the end.
Yay! Yeah, no, every book's going to take a different level of time, and it's interesting. And I will note that, yes, Atlas in the comments did mention that Oracle doesn't have the algorithm magic anymore, yeah, and that can play effect for this particular platform, but, or platforms in general, like who's owning what. But yeah, going to live events is something that I've been doing more of recently, but I still am very hesitant because I'm a workaholic. So
Mhm.
I try not to overbook myself. And then there are authors kind of like Atlas and here, and it sounds like you that are taking full advantage of doing face-to-face events. I don't know how many you try to do in a year, in a month, or whatever, but those can be great ways to meet people. So just name some of the events that you're trying to get into or you're involved with this year that people may see you face to face.
So I've already done GalaxyCon in Richmond. I'm in Richmond, Virginia.
Nice.
And so I did GalaxyCon here. I did AwesomeCon in DC. I have, what do I have coming up? I have Gen Con, which is huge. I did Gen Con in
Mhm.
2019. Was supposed to go back in 2020, and stuff happened in 2020. And then didn't get back until last year and did amazingly. And so I'm going to go again this year. There are a couple others. I think I'm applying to New York Comic Con. FanX Salt Lake City is another one I hit up just because it's a really big one. So yeah.
See, okay, I'll have to pick your brain behind the scenes about, and I always like to talk to people who travel to cons because I'm fortunate being outside of Atlanta that we get a lot of, anything from the small ones all the way to Dragon Con, which is very, very, very big, and everything in between. So I haven't really made the jump to travel out of state to events, and the idea of if I can't load it in my car in one go, or if I can't drive there and if I'm flying there, what do I do? Like, how do I plan? How do I prepare? What do I bring? That just like kind of, again, this kind of, I haven't done it. And once I do it, I'll probably feel far more comfortable. But because I haven't done it, it sounds like just like a different animal.
It is. And so I usually only go to cons where there are people I know. So,
Mhm.
for example, Salt Lake City has one of my friends, Robert Zangari. He arranges this big author group, and so I just have my book shipped to him, and he drops them off at the convention center, and we did that. I did Dragonsteel last year. Brandon Sanderson's one, same thing. Robert is there in Salt Lake City, and so I was,
Jealous.
yeah. Gen Con is in Indianapolis, and I have my cousin lives there. And New York Comic Con was huge too. That was probably one of my bigger ones. And I just drove there with a friend. We actually rented a minivan so we could pack. He's an author, I was an author. We shared our hotel room, and we just drove up
Aw,
together in a minivan. So that
that's
sort of thing
perfect.
does, yeah.
I
But
was gonna say, oh, sorry. Go.
I was gonna say if you're in Atlanta, I'll hook you up with Richard Fierce. Like, do you know Richard Fierce by any chance?
I don't think so, actually. I'm far better with faces than names, but that one does not necessarily ring a bell. So I would say I'm going to just play it safe and say no.
Richard Fierce is one of my con buddies. We've done several cons together, and so he lives I think about an hour north of Atlanta.
Oh,
And he drives to a lot of cons. He drives to a lot of them. So within the range of Atlanta, I think there's Chattanooga has a really big one.
hmm.
He drives all over, so he's the one you'd want to talk to because he's doing the same thing. Only he has a higher tolerance for driving than I do. So
I'll have to. I wonder if he's going to Jordan Con this weekend. That's what I'm
yes,
attending. Okay, so I'll have to look. Okay, Richard Fierce. I'll keep an eye out. Just made a note with my handy dandy notes because I'm heading to that tomorrow, and we'll be kind of in and out all weekend. So I'll have to kind of introduce myself and say you recommended him to talk to.
are you selling or are you going to be just visiting?
So, long story short, last year I definitely sold and paneled and did the whole thing. This year I wasn't supposed to, but
Hmm.
thanks to knowing so many people in the author community, someone offered to let me join him on his table. So I will be selling.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, selling in person, I was very lucky. 2019, I had no idea what I was doing. 2021, I think, is when I went to the first con. I really started learning something. It was one in Raleigh, which is also not far from Atlanta. That's what, about
Mhm.
eight. That is pretty far from Atlanta. I take it back. I'm gonna shut up. But because I've driven that, I've driven. My kids were figure skaters, and we went to this
Oh,
competition in Birmingham, and we went through Atlanta, and then we drove up through Atlanta, through North Carolina, back to Virginia. So I remember that taking about 8 or 9 hours from Atlanta. But Raleigh, I don't know. Anyway, getting ahead of myself. Raleigh was the first time I did a con. There was this thing called Bard's Tower, which is this guy. He used to have this big thing at all the major cons where he would set up, get a bunch of authors together. He'd include a few
that's
really
fantastic.
big name authors mixed in with some indie authors. But the thing is, he was kind of there's all kinds of stuff that was going on there. It failed. But what got really positive out of that was there's a guy, Keith Candido, and he's written for Marvel, I think. And I was sitting right
Ooh.
beside him, and he was telling me you should do this, this, and this, and this. And so I learned so much about like in-person events, like how to pitch. And I'm always learning. I always see, all right, who's doing really well, and what are they doing well. And sometimes it's
Mhm.
just like I have a romantasy book, and then boom, people are coming and buying the books, And other people have to work for it. Like I have to work
Yeah.
for my sales. So
Well, I just saw something. I'll share it for all these authors who may be listening in or listening in the future about this. And I will tell you, this is not my idea. One of my other author friends did this last weekend and posted about it, and I was like, beautiful. So they have these like teeny little circular rotating displays that people do
mhm.
for photographs and all that kind of stuff. But he got it because he could put his book on it, and it just rotated in between again the movement thing on the table and the fact that he was rotating a special edition, so it had a little more glitz and glamour.
Mhm.
It was one of those great ways to pull people in. And so immediately this past week I ordered two of them because I was like, well, I'll have one charged and I'll constantly rotate them and have at least one book
Mhm.
rotated, because it doesn't take a lot of space, but it's something to catch the eye and to bring people into your booth. And I was like, ooh, I love
That's what
this.
Richard Fierce does. That he does have a rotating table, and yeah. So
See, I love this. I absolutely love this. But yeah, no, going to live events is fantastic. And one of the other things that, since you're kind of in that still the same area, I will mention, I'm involved with, and it's a new thing. It's called the Crowded Shelf, and it's a mobile, independently published bookstore. So any person who has an independently published book can put their book into this bookstore, and they travel around to the biggest cons in the Southeast and sell it at the event. So you don't have to attend the things; they'll sell it for you. If you are attending and want to help work their booth, the cut you
that's
make gets better. And so I do know they've gone to a couple of the cons, are slotted to go to some of the cons that you mentioned. So you might see them around there, and definitely check them
that's
out and talk to them because it's
that's
kind of
like
cool.
James Whalen, Megan, and
Yes.
yeah, they're friends of mine. So yeah,
Ah, okay, there you go.
I hung out with them over
Cool.
at whatever con that was, which I think it was Awesome Con that I was hanging out with them.
Yes,
So
they went
yeah,
to that one relatively recently. So,
so
uh,
I met Megan through Bard's Tower back in 2021. So I've known Megan for a really long time. Wayland, I just met at RavenCon. That's our local con. So,
huh.
but yeah.
See, small world. And I do think it's kind of cool because wherever authors hub in whatever means they choose, because whatever comfort zone, people who do the con bracket seem to know each other very, very well. People who like hub on a particular social start knowing all the other authors in that social. It is kind of neat because there are different kind of pockets, and the author community is really, really cool. But before we get all the way all over about marketing, advertising, and how we meet people, let's actually go back to your books. So tell me, the quick pitch of your first book of the series you have stacked in front of you. Who are the characters? Just sell me on your work.
Okay, well, I'll give you. This is what I do at cons. This is my pitch.
Yes, exactly.
Can I interest you in an Asian epic fantasy?
I like that.
This is about a misfit with the perfect voice who evoked the lost magic of dragon songs. Only there are no teachers, so she has to cobble it together from the other types of magic in the world. Book one centers around a lute made from a dragon scale, and only a dragon singer can coax magic out of it. She has to learn how to do it before her father, the Emperor, marries her off to a sadistic traitor. There's also a spy component where two snarky ninjas have to uncover a plot against the throne. Both threads come together in an explosive ending. It's book one out of a 4-book complete series, and usually this is all displayed on something. 4-book complete series has action, adventure, backstabbing, betrayal, just like my life. little bit of best friends, enemies, lovers, slow burn romance. Not like my life. So that's my
That is
pitch.
really cool. I will say, someone in the comment, I agree, said to slow down your pitch a little bit, because I know when you're selling live, you only have a couple moments before someone may walk on. But because you were so quick about it, it was just like, whoa, slow down a little bit. I'm missing some important facts. But outside of that, that sounds really neat. And so what inspired you to write this series?
So the long answer. Do you want the long answer or the short answer?
Hey, we got some time. It's however you want.
I actually have to get back to work, so I don't have,
Okay,
so
fair.
but basically, when it snows in this area, everything shuts down, and it was around 2010, I think. My mom told me to clean. I played Dungeons and Dragons before it
Oh,
was
yeah.
cool, and I created this world when I was like 14 years old. And in 2010, my mother told me, you got to move your Dungeons and Dragons crap out of the house, out of her house, into my house, because by then I already owned a house. I feel like you should take responsibility for these things. And so I went through it. I was going to throw it all away, but I was looking at it and I was like, well, this 14-year-old, he definitely was a 14-year-old teenage boy, let's say that. But he definitely didn't understand economics, apparently not gravity either. And so I was like, I'm going to recreate this world. And so I recreated this world. And on the 6th day, I rested and realized I wasn't actually going to play Dungeons and Dragons again. So I decided to write a book. And at the time, I envisioned 3 books, like 3 different areas, like a European area, an Asian area, and a South Asian area. And I didn't know the first thing about fiction writing. I definitely read a lot of it when I was growing up, but I was more at the time, I did technical writing, speech writing, all that kind of writing, but not actual fiction writing. So I wrote a short story, which became a novel. It was snowing in Richmond, and so over a span of 3 weeks, I wrote this book. This would become book 3 of a series. Basically, it was utter trash. I didn't understand point of view, didn't understand how to create depth of character or anything for that matter. But I joined in I think it must have been 2013 or so. I joined a group called, it was 2014 actually. I joined a group called Critique Circle, and it was this online critique group. And basically, I submitted this one excerpt from the story, the first thing I ever wrote, expecting people to go, "Oh, this is amazing," and instead people were like, "This is shit." I mean, they didn't say it, of course, but if you read between the lines, as a good author does, it's like, yeah, this is shit. And so I realized, a lesser man would have given up, but I decided to go ahead and learn how to write. And so, with a lot of feedback from some amazing authors, some people who have done really well for themselves, I went and revised this book. But when it was done, my critique partner said, it was basically it was a male-centered story. It was a story about this guy and sort of his childhood love, who he ends up despising. They can't stand each other. And then there was also a kind of a love triangle in there as well. But it was basically an omniscient story, and it was male-centered. It was probably 60% of the man, and then 20% for each of the female, points of view. And you can say that with omniscient. But then my authors, one was a rom-com author, and the other was a YA fantasy romance author. And they were like, well, we want to know more about her and blah, 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 blah. And so I went and wrote this book here, a prequel, to talk about how does this character come into her power. Because in this book, or not this book, the original story, she's already has all this power through music. She knows how to, she's literally charmed a dragon with her voice by this book. And so I went and wrote the story about how she charms a dragon. And then I submitted it to, the trad route. I was submitting it to agents a literary agent. And one of them wrote back and said, this is good, but I want to see your prologue in chapter 1 deserve a story of their own. So at the time I was actually finishing up with the last book in the series, and it was actually NaNoWriMo time. And it took 1 week to finish off what was almost done with this book. And then in 3 weeks I finished book 1. And at the time I was very motivated. Once again, I have never written like that ever again. And so I wrote book 1, and so my original book 1 ended up being book 3. So that's the very long story of it all.
I like that. Everybody has such interesting stories of how they got there. Now, yours is very unique, but for me, it was the series that I was in. The series that inspired me to become a writer, that concept that I've been wanting to kind of share with the world for years and years, was not the first book series that I wrote. I had wanted to, but I was hesitant because I wanted to write something to figure out how to do everything, what my writing voice would be like, and the whole processes. And unfortunately and fortunately, that first book that was supposed to be kind of a tester ended up being a 4-book series. So it put my other work onto a bigger hiatus. But I think that was really good because allowing me to write a full series and go through the whole process and figure everything out on the publishing side of things, and also learn, yes, you have to advertise your books. You can't just, release them to the world. And it was better for the series that I've written since then. So that is pretty cool.
In 2011, you could just release it to the world and people would find it. But by 2014, by the time we did in 2016, you have to work. You have to work.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So. I wish it was one of those be free and catch all the attention. It's not like that.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't actually finish the story. I'm sorry. I'll just say.
Continue.
So it was originally envisioned but the world I recreated was envisioned to be 3 novels, but it ended up being like this series. And I wanted to start in the Asian part of the world because in 2016 there wasn't a lot of Asian epic fantasy at the time.
That's true.
In the interim, I think 2018 is where you see Poppy War, and a lot of the other Asian fantasies that come out. But before that, you just didn't see a whole lot. And so I was like, that's what I wanted to do, because I had watched so many like Hong Kong movies, I'd watched Japanese dramas, and it's like, and I'd lived in Taiwan and Japan for a while after college. So there was just a lot to it that I wanted to get into.
Well, it's been such a nice thing to see worldwide that the diversification of both not just literature but cinema and shows and bringing even I love watching international flicks and series and because everybody has such a different way and perspective of telling a story. So It is a beautiful thing, and that is really neat that that's your passion and what you're being able to write in your stories. So how many books do you have at the moment? Because I see these multiple stacks that you've been kind of jockeying back and forth, so it's hard for me to...
I think I'm up to 16 or 17.
Wow, I love that.
Most of it, like I said, I've probably only done 2 since 2020. Only put out 2 since 2020, but I think I'm up to 16 or 17.
That's
let me turn that off. All right.
It's okay. I have those things up. Wonderful alarms that say, remember, you do other things in life too. I get that.
Yeah. So what are your books about?
So I am on the high fantasy author writing side. All my book series are different. I'm not one that's been able to like stay in the same universe. Every time I have something new I want to write, I have to start from scratch and world build again. It's fun, challenging, but it takes a little bit of time. But right now I have 3 different series. They're mini and behind me, and not all the books are displayed since I'm about to go to Jordan Con, so I was packing some up. But at the top, there are 3 of my 5 for my YA Isekai Portal Fantasy series. So it's set in Magic Multiverse. It is on the younger YA side, so it's that cleaner fantasy, epics, quest, adventure. Everything you want in a quintessential YA fantasy is going to be found there. You're going to have your dragons, you can have your lich, you can have sandwich-loving half-elves, all the fun stuff. And again, it starts from the younger teens and they age up progressively throughout the series. My childhood alter ego is the main character because I invented that multiverse when I was a child with my sister, so her alter ego is also written in there. And it's just a lot of fun, and it has definitely flavors of 90s cinema and shows in there too, because that was like big when I was developing that world. So things like Yu-Gi-Oh, Dragonheart, things like that, Stargate SG-1 all have little flavors in there. But my first series that I wrote is the Incarn Saga. There are 4 books. Starting with The Lady in the Blue, and it's a dark, new adult dark fantasy about shifters and war gods. So set in a kingdom on the verge of war where humans and shapeshifters have to decide if they can put aside their differences in order to fend off a greater threat. And the one that I don't really have a lot to display at the moment, they're very dark right in the background, but I do have a series that's also complete. It's called The Guardian Speaker. It's a dark retelling of Nordic myth. There are 16 novellas. And then I bundled them in different sets of omnibuses. So these kind of darker books are sets of 4. And I'm about to release special editions of them. But again, dark retelling of Nordic myth. It's like a Viking Odyssey throughout all the 9 realms of that mythos. And it takes you on an epic adventure. So I love stuff like that. I love stories that take you on these amazing adventures. I love pulling from mythos and, from around the world, and being Scandinavian by descent, of course, one in wine is...
I would have never guessed.
So...
So I went to just look at your book covers before we did this, and the way you described it, I was like, basically the cover sells the book. No matter how many times we say, don't buy a book, don't judge a book by its cover. When I was looking at your books, I was like, this is probably a shifter story, and that's probably a Norse story of some sort. Yep. So I think you captured your what columns really well, your tropes really well on the covers.
Well, thank you. And again, you live and you learn. I am one of those authors who's done everything wrong the first time. The first book, as far as Claws, the cover did not look like this. I did something that in my mind was really cool, but it wasn't right for the genre and the subgenre. And so I had to make that call and revamp it earlier on, which helped.
That is the original cover of book 1.
That does remind me of a romance.
YA fantasy romance, totally. So anyway, yeah.
You live and you learn, you live and you learn.
You live, you spend a lot of money, and you learn.
Yeah, there's that too.
Yeah.
So the book you're saying, you mentioned earlier, you've been working on a book for the better part of a couple years. Do you have, I think you mentioned you were also towards the end of that project. So do you have any hopes or ideas of when you would want to do your next release, or are you just going to wait and see depending on what the story demands?
So I was, there are many things to say about my life, but you know,
okay.
Back in, do you remember back in with the books, when Bookstagram took off, like it must have been about 2018, 2019, and people were taking pictures of their books with like coffee mugs and flowers. And at that time I said, I'm going to buy a sword. I'm going to take a picture of my book with a sword. And swords, they're kind of like a drug. You buy one and you get this rush, and then you need another one. And before I knew it, I had about 20 some swords and a wife who said I had too many swords. And so I'm an acupuncturist by trade. And what I do on the side is I teach Wing Chun Kung Fu. And inside my martial arts school, I had these extra rooms where I was treating patients if I needed to, besides my regular clinic. And so when the pandemic hit, we installed a lot of antiviral and sterilization equipment inside our main clinic, but it wasn't worth doing it in the Kung Fu school just because I wasn't seeing many patients there. It's going to cost thousands of dollars. So I had this one room with big windows that face out onto a main thoroughfare, and I was like, you know what? I have all these extra swords. I'm gonna open up a sword shop. And so I told my wife, we're gonna sell 150 swords a year. Total bullshit. There's like no way in hell we're gonna sell 150 swords a year. And I basically opened up grand opening. It was just one room, one of those front rooms, and it wasn't that big. It's like 10 by 12, I think, is the size of it. And that took off basically by October. It was December of 2021, and by October of 2022, we were on track to sell that 150 swords a year. And I was like, we're going to do this. I was totally BSing. But then we actually had a video go viral on TikTok, and all of a sudden we were selling 150 a month. And so so my main job is acupuncture. And then I do teach martial arts, but what takes up a lot of my time now is I do have a sword store, and I do have here lots. These are all antique swords over here, like 2 walls worth or 1 wall worth. Almost every one of those is like an antique sword. So,
wait, where did you say your sword shop is located? I'm going to write this down. I want to make a point.
It's in Richmond, Virginia, and in fact, I mean, if I don't know if. I see like there's only one person watching this right now, but like we live stream from the shop all the time, and we'll get like if we're actually demonstrating, we'll get 1,000 people in our live stream easily.
I love that.
So yeah, but it's in Richmond, Virginia, and you can go to rva-katana.com as our website. So anyway, that takes up way too much time, and because of that, that's the long answer. Everything I have is a long answer as to I have no idea when this one book is going to be done. So.
Hey, no, that's fine, and it's a fantastic answer. No, when I started doing research and heavily kind of deep diving into the background of what was going to become the Guardian Speaker, my Viking fantasy, I was doing a lot of went through all the history during the Viking era and the mythos and deep dives, but along the lines started collecting replicas of stuff from back then. So I get a Viking helmet, I have like the bearded axe, I get the sword, and started making round shields. And so one section of my husband and I basement is now kind of like a mead hall style, because it has like armory hung up on the walls, and I'm always collecting new things. And when we got married, one of the things I gifted him at the ceremony was a Viking sword.
Nice. So why aren't you live streaming from your hall, from your mead hall?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's true. I was gonna say, but and depending on where I've lived, a lot of times I've had some of my weaponry on the back walls of my offices. But Now, what my goal is to have floor to ceiling bookshelves behind me. So at some point, I'll do that. This is a relatively new office, so. But
Yeah.
I do love that kind of stuff, and I'm super fascinated again. So that is really neat. I love this. I will one day visit you at your shop in Richmond. So that is exciting. So how do you? Because now you're a person who juggles so many jobs and so many passions. How do you balance?
Well, it helps.
Or
Both
try.
both of my kids are in college, so I don't necessarily. I have a lot more free time. Once the pandemic hit, my partner, my business partner, and I, we shared an office, and we decided we didn't want to be in the office at the same time, just because we didn't want a lot of people, spreading germs, and we've kept it that way. It turned out to be very convenient. So I'm actually only working in my quote unquote day job like maybe 20 hours a week, which leaves me 20 hours to do whatever I want. And honestly, if I were more effective with my time, I could do a lot more. But sometimes I just got to stare at a wall. So.
Hey, that's sometimes part of the process. You never know what's working behind the scenes as you stare at those wonderful walls or
Yeah.
into the void. So let me also ask, since I know you mentioned a little earlier, your time may be a little limited, and I usually run these for about an hour, but if you need to leave earlier, that is totally fine.
I can
Um,
stay until 2. I can stay
okay.
till 2.
Just want to make sure, but I didn't want to also make you feel nervous and pressured, so that was just making sure I threw that one out there. But yeah, balance is always a hard thing for any author, and having multiple jobs and figuring things out. Do you have a preferable time of day that works better for you? Like, are you a morning writer versus evening, or do you just do it when you can?
So morning, here's the big problem. I used to be a morning writer, but we get the swords mostly from China, which means I have to talk to these suppliers in the morning because it's their evening, their time. So my most creative prime writing time is usually me communicating with like our sources. So yeah, that has happened. These days, I'm kind of writing early afternoon is the other time I do it. What I usually do nowadays is I just drive over. I live about half a mile from a Panera. I just go and hang out in a Panera because you can get free refills on drinks, and I'll just go and write. But I am very easily distracted.
Yeah.
I really need to find something to get the same focus I had when writing some of these some of these books. So
That's fair. I applaud anybody who can work at coffee shops or things like that. I'm such a social person, and I know writing is such an introverted style job, but I'm an extreme extrovert. And even though I can't speak for all my senses, but hearing is something that like I feel like I have a decent sense for, and so I get distracted all the time. Movement and sound, and it's just like if I need to write something, I have to be in my home, no distractions, no music,
mhm.
just full focus if I'm writing something new. Now, if I'm editing or marketing, that's different. I can do that out and about and, around other people. The productivity may drop down a little bit, but I can do that. Yet, writing something new, I can't even think about trying to do that in public.
Right. Well, I can't say it's effective. The most effective I've ever been is when it was snowing and I couldn't go anywhere and I was just sort of stuck. So, yeah.
Okay, so you want some snow to head your way.
I like one really good snowstorm a year, and
Fair.
otherwise, because of everything else I do, it just kills business. So,
Fair. I get you. I get you. What would you want to write next after you get through the current series you're working on? Do you have any clue of what would be a new project? Is it going and if so, would it be in the same kind of genre, same world, or something totally different?
so every answer I've given you has been really long-winded. So
It's
let's
okay.
prepare for a very long-winded answer.
It's
So yeah,
okay. My questions are long-winded, so.
my core series is the Dragon Song Saga, 4-book complete series.
Love
I have a incomplete series here. I have one more book to go in this one, Dragonstones, and that's what's next. I guess like I got to finish this because I have
it.
people who are clamoring like, what happens, what happens. So that one is next. This is a standalone book within, and they're all in the same world. So here's the thing: the
Mhm.
sidekick character of this story was everyone's favorite character, and so she ended up getting an origin story over here. This is the 6 novellas. I like to
Ooh.
say, are you familiar with the Apothecary Diaries?
I know their name. I have not read them.
Okay, have you know about Memoirs of a Geisha?
Yes.
I say this series is like Memoirs of a Geisha if it had snarky queer ninjas and the stakes actually mattered. So that's her origin story. It was a total accident. It was supposed to be a 5,000 word short story because I had all these readers who are like, tell us more about her and tell us more about
Mhm.
this setting, which is kind of like, it's basically a courtesan district. I'm like, okay, I'll write a 5,000 story about betrayal. And then before I knew it was like 20,000 words and left open
Yep.
ended. And I just kept on adding more and more little segments. It's like a novella series that, because it kept on,
Mhm.
I just kept on adding more installments. So that series was finished. It introduced a new character who I really liked. And so the current series I'm writing on is that the sidekick character, or not the sidekick character, one of the other characters from this series. So I need to finish that. I need to finish this book here, and then I actually have another book that I was going to go the trad route, and I think I'm about 70% done with it, but I haven't touched it in like
Mhm.
3 or 4 years.
Ah,
So
fair.
yeah, I
It
might get
sounds
back
like
to that.
you've been keeping busy. I understand
Well,
that.
I'm so in Chinese medicine, I'm what we call a fire type. I'm a sort of person who gets a sudden spark, but then I
Mhm.
fizzle out really quickly. And so I can be motivated. When I'm motivated, I can really do something. But that motivation, how long that lasts, that really varies. And so I have this really bad thing of starting something and then losing interest or getting busy and just sort of putting it down and just never getting back to it. So I actually have a lot of stories out there that need to be finished. So
Hey, I think that's something that issue, if you want to call it such, is something a lot of authors deal with because it's that new, pretty shiny story that you want to
mhm.
jump on because maybe it's just you're so tired and you need to like take a break. But the question is, can you come back if you take a break? And are you going to follow through if you do the new
Mhm.
shiny story? Because there'll be another, interesting, intriguing story before you finish that one. So everybody kind of has to navigate how you go through and what you write in what order, as long as you finish things, so your readers aren't angry after like
Yeah.
10 years and you're like, where's the next book?
If only we could have a fan base like George R. R. Martin, who
Yeah.
just want that final. Yeah.
Well,
Getting
I
there.
do think his fan base is a little, I think they've hit their threshold and they're like, come on, we want this over with. We want to know what happens next. Please publish. But
I think pretty much. I think they've given up. I think Patrick Rothfuss and George R. R. Martin, their fans don't expect closure on their series. So
I know it's
yeah.
those are things, and that burns out a lot of readers, and that's one of the things that I noticed just by just talking to readers as well as other authors and my own experience is that there is a huge section of readership that will not touch a book if it's part of a
Mm-hmm.
series that isn't incomplete.
Mm-hmm.
They will wait until it's all done so they can binge through it and then enjoy it and know that they're going to get the conclusion, which is hard because if you're a person kind of like me that writes longer and longer series, it takes a while. And so you're missing that kind of marketing for that group until then. So it's one of those motivations that I have to try to finish series in a timely-ish manner. I am still also a person that publishes multiple works from multiple books and series simultaneously, but I do try to make sure I do write by my readership and have some kind of forward progression. And even if it's only a book a year in that series, at least I'm like, hey, I'm trying to do this or whatever. I'm trying to just be honest with them. But I want that readership. I want all the readers who would like my books to get the chance to read my books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is actually something that's really affecting the trad publishing now, is because we're such an on-demand society that
Mm-hmm.
readers have now expected to have a complete series sooner than later, and the entire trad process is slow. I mean,
Yeah.
you might put out one book a year, and if the first book doesn't sell well, then the trad publisher is not going to put out the resources for book two. And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, you run into this sort of catch 22.
Yep. I definitely agree. And I think because there are more and more authors finding different ways and alternative ways to
Mm-hmm.
publish, you have the bigger publishing houses, middle level, small press, independent, and there are other platforms now people kind of publish through different kind of membership
Mm-hmm.
platforms, and that's one way to get their work out. There's so many ways now for readers to read books and authors to publish books that I think those who have mastered releasing quicker than trad do have some level of benefit, but to what
Mm-hmm.
extent, it'll be interesting. I wish there was a study on that.
Yeah, no, it is definitely. Yeah, well, the other thing about trad is that it's like they're kind of choosing the winners. They're kind of
Hmm.
deciding this book is the one that's going to do really well, so we're going to put a huge marketing campaign behind this, and all the rest is going to be like spaghetti on the wall. It's like if it sticks, it sticks. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So yeah, I think that trad has kind of fallen behind the times in this regard.
So then, okay, with that point of view in mind, what makes you interested in going trad? I'm interested in hybridizing at some point, but I was just curious about you because you were saying that you have a book that you would like to query out at some point. What about the idea of having a book published through a traditional means intrigues you?
I think it's just the clout. I'm ultimately I'm a validation whore. I grew up in a
Okay.
I grew up in the United States, but with a Asian father a Chinese father who never gave validation, and so I'm psychoanalyzing myself, by the way. But basically, I look at a lot of things I do, and it's like, oh my god, I need validation in my life, and to me, that's it. It's like, who cares if I've sold 100,000 books already? I still kind of want the validation of trad. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Hey, there are so many authors that if they hear that number, that 100,000 bookmark, are just wowed by it. And some that are going through, more traditional means because it's hard to do. So you should make sure you appreciate the fact that you have done that as an independent author, that you have reached that amount of readership and the time so far.
Oh, I definitely appreciate it. I definitely appreciate that. But at the same time, it's kind of like you know about Dungeon Crawler Carl, right? Like
Hmm.
Matt Dinniman. I mean, well, what am I trying to say here? I don't even know what I'm trying to say. But,
Well, Matt's a very
so,
nice person. I will admit
oh no, Matt
that.
Dinniman's awesome, awesome guy. And
Yeah.
the thing is, I think Richard Fierce was telling me, I think that he literally sells 50,000 copies a month of books on all the various platforms, and it wouldn't surprise me.
Nope.
Ultimately, for me, it's not about the money. It's not about the money. As much as it is about sort of people. I guess, man, I'm really psychoanalyzing myself. I'm a total
We're
validation.
getting deep conversations.
Yeah, no, it is the validation. It's ultimately about the validation.
See, the thing that intrigues me about hybridizing, and for anybody who listens to this doesn't know that term, what that means is you have some books that are independently published, other books through
Mhm.
more traditional means. Now, what interests me about hybridizing is that I'm a control freak. I will still have control of all my independent stuff. I make bigger cuts with my independent stuff per sale, but having one book or a series through traditional means, and depending on, again, your deal and who you use, in theory, you will have some level of support marketing wise to get your books into, the stores and in front of readers. And that would be nice because if someone could help pull interest in one series or book, once
Mhm.
they read it and they're like, oh, I like this author, what else have they read? They can funnel into my independent stuff, which gives
Right.
me a better cut. So I think that would be a nice thing to have a little bit of both because it kind of, I think, you get the best of both worlds. Of course, you get
Right.
the worst of both worlds too in some part, but that's one of the things that intrigues me.
Yeah, that's definitely something I didn't say out loud, but I was definitely thinking that. Uh, the other thing is actually is connections that you make with trad publishing. I think that trad authors now are much more open to talking to indie authors compared to like 5, 10 years ago. But I think definitely if you have like a trad published book, then other trad authors it's easier to connect them. It's easier to get blurbs from them, stuff like that. So yeah, there's that. There's definitely that. And as you said, I mean, I would not from a marketing perspective, I would not want to do a trad deal just because the control of it, being able to control who I market this to, like choosing the artwork behind it, all these different things. So yeah, purely for the clout and the validation.
Hey, I wish you the best. I have some author friends who are currently going through the hybridization process, and it's really fascinating because I'll pick their brains, knowing them, that they have experience with into publishing, and be like, so what's the differences? What do you like about this? What do you know? All that kind of stuff behind the scenes, because it is fascinating to me. But there is kind of that stigma, and I personally wish the stigma would kind of go away of, if you go trad, you're a better writer than not. But the truth of the matter is because there's no gatekeepers in some senses for independent publish, there is a lot of junk that comes through. So it is
Yeah.
hard. to kind
Well,
of.
the quality is improved significantly in
Yeah.
terms of like self-published books. Like I mean, you said 2016. Back in
Mhm.
2016, I'd probably say if you had a halfway decent book with a good-looking cover, you were going to sell books. You would get, people would read your book. But then there was also a lot because there was a lot of crap back then. I
Yeah.
remember, in 2019 when I did my first major con, I probably had for the first several years like the best book covers, and now everyone has amazing book covers. So you
Mhm.
have to find all the time. You always have to find more and more ways to stand out. So
Well, there was a time when you would go to, let's say, Barnes and Noble, and you would see those beautiful, again, the special edition books,
mhm.
the foiling and maybe sprayed edges or whatever they had, the ribbon bookmarks, and you're like, wow. And as someone who's been an independent author, I would look at those and see that, and that was another reason at the time that I was like, man, I would love to go trad because I want one of these. But now independently published people can have those books.
Mhm.
And it is the first time I met someone who was like, yeah, I'm Indian, that's my book. I was like, what? How? Please
Mhm.
walk me through. And I need to double, but wait, hold on.
If you're willing to buy enough copies, you're going to get them for less than you would going through KDP or Ingram.
that's
So,
that's
yeah.
true too. So it's living and learning in a world that constantly is evolving in so
Mhm.
many ways. I actually, before I get to some of the questions, I always want to make sure I fit in. I do have one that I'm afraid I'm going to forget. Out of all your books, and I know they're all in the same world now, we talked about it and how they kind of flow from one to the other and various character spin-offs. Do you have, and don't hate me, I'm going to ask this question, do you have a favorite character? If so, who?
I don't know why. I mean, that's easy. So
Okay, some people are
yeah.
like, why would you make me pick?
Yeah,
So
no,
just,
my favorite character is now, and probably was subconsciously my favorite character, is the half elf sidekick.
ah,
Yeah, anyway, there's artists have done various renditions over the years. So yeah, I think that probably my enthusiasm for this character, because she's like my inner monologue. She's very
oh,
sarcastic. Um,
I like that.
she's very sarcastic, and like when you read the narration, I try to tell it from a close third person point of view, and so usually it's like all of her chapters are kind of like sarcastic and has this sort of like I don't know. Anyway, it's basically my interior monologue, and
Oh,
so
I
I'd say
wish.
that she's my favorite. Yeah.
See, that's one type of character that I struggle with. I want to write, and I'm trying to work on a character that's on the sarcastic, a little pessimistic, but like has a sarcastic humor to him,
Mhm.
and I struggle with that so hard. I appreciate it when I hear it and read it, but it's not something that I'm good at. And it's just like, wow, this is a weak link. I need to work on. I need to be a little more snarky. I don't know. I need to level up there. But some of the questions that I have, just because I know we're at that part of the hour that's going to start picking up, we've kind of touched a little bit on some of this, but just to rehash, where can people get your books? Where are they distributed through? Can you get them direct? Are they wide? Are they just through KU? That kind of thing.
You can get it through Amazon KU if you want to give Jeff Bezos money. You can go through my website if you don't want to give Jeff Bezos money. So.
See, I like that. I was going to say, buy direct. For anybody who doesn't know, buying direct is the best way to support an author because they get the best cut. So,
And not only that, we can sign it. We'll increase the value by about 25 cents. And if we die tomorrow, maybe 35 cents.
well, you never know. You could also have, like, if you sign it and then rechange your covers, all of a sudden you have a legacy cover, and you can start working on the collectible stuff, early on. It's just how you want to do it. But one of the other things is, I see you have a mix of paperbacks and it looks like hardcovers. Are all your books available in both of those? And do you have ebooks and audiobooks, or what formats?
So, series one, the first series, complete series, is in hardback. The novella series is available as a single hardback over here. I guess you can't see it; it's not in the camera. And the rest are all softcover. Maybe one of these days I'll get a hardback involved, but yeah, not enough hours in the day.
Yeah.
They are all but one of them is available in audiobook, which is the fun. It's kind of the one that I pitched to men. So in a convention, there's always profiling going on. I'm always like, okay, this person I'm going to pitch this book to. That person I'm going to pitch this book to. And so there's one that I pitched to young men or to men in general, and that one does not have an audiobook. That's the only one that doesn't. They'll always be like, do you have the audiobook? Like, no, I have other audiobooks, but I don't have that audiobook.
See, it sounds like you'll need to change that in the near future. Now, I understand audiobooks aren't necessarily the cheapest thing to produce. I fully understand, but that may be saying something behind the scenes of it might be worth to invest in that one for that book.
Oh, it's more about I don't know if I want to write more in the series. And
Okay.
sometimes when that happens, I'll go and do some rewriting or adding some extra chapters in. So I
Gotcha.
don't want to write it now and maybe have to, get it. I'm sorry, don't want to have it narrated now and then maybe have to change it down the road. That's
Yeah.
more the issue. So,
Okay, that makes complete sense. I understand. I got that now. But yeah, one of the things that I've started to do, because having authors, having websites, and depending on again what your contracts are, understand that as an author, I'm able to distribute all my ebooks and most of my audiobooks wide. So I've rigged it so I can also sell them direct through my website. And so now, and when I go to events and someone's like, "Oh, I want an audiobook," I was like, "I can sell you one right here. I have your download code right here. I can get you one in hand. If you want an ebook, I got you right here."
now, who
Or
are
you
you
can
doing
buy
that?
it wherever you want. But
Who are you doing that through?
I'm doing that through BookFunnel.
Okay, yeah, I have BookFunnel too. I just haven't taken advantage of it. I mean, I used to have all these different things that. So back, well, I don't know how much to say it, but back in I guess it was 2018, 2019. That's when Facebook ads are starting to work really well.
Mhm.
And part of what I would do is I would always have a link at the end of the book to go to a free story.
Mhm.
And so I knew anyone who clicked, and it was going to BookFunnel. So I knew anyone who signed up through that list was someone who read my book and liked them enough to join the list. So I actually have some like certain mailing lists. I have not written a newsletter probably in like 4 or 5 years, but I have a list of people who I know because the only way they could have gotten that link was to have gone through the back of one of my books. And so that's one of the ways. And then back then you could create a 1% lookalike audience. So you would take those audiences and create a lookalike audience and then just, push them out to more people. And yeah, I miss those days. Yeah.
Yeah, again, there are people who can still do very, very, very well with the advertising opportunities out there. It's just not me. I can't figure it out. And every time I feel like I'm grasping it, it slips away. So, but the idea of having, something special, your reader's magnet, as some people call it, for your newsletters or things like that, those are always kind of neat. And I definitely have taken advantage of that, saying, "Hey, you want to get some free stuff? Short stories, sample chapters, sign up and I'll send you that introduction."
So one person, what I was telling you about the guy I went to New York Comic Con with, he unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but he moved to Portugal.
Wow.
So we don't get to do cons together anymore. But he's just so good at selling books. But what he basically uses BookFunnel. He does Facebook ads that go to the BookFunnel page and sells that way. And he does really well through Facebook ads to direct to his BookFunnel as opposed to Amazon. So I always go straight to Amazon. So
Yeah, and depending on how you route it, you could do the direct sales thing, or you have that universal link, which shows you wherever they want to purchase,
Right.
but again, sends them to yeah. I was gonna say again, I've dabbled with that, but not been successful. But that's just my personal thing. It's I'm not good. I know my weaknesses. This is one of them. Personally. So I also, now that we mentioned that you do have a newsletter, you haven't sent one out in 4 years, so it's not necessarily an active newsletter, and I'm pretty sure you've mentioned you have a website, correct?
yes, it's jccon.dragonstonepress.us. But if you look up JC Kang, you'll find me.
And let me also ask, this is another one I like, outside of Book Talk, because obviously we're here, do you like to hub on any other socials, and if so, which ones?
Facebook. I have Facebook and Instagram, but I don't do a whole lot with any of, not even TikTok that much. So I'm watching this Chinese drama, Pursuit of Jade, and I'm sort of talking about it on TikTok. That's about the extent of of what I'm doing. I don't do a whole lot on TikTok. I don't do a whole lot of social media for my books. I do a crap ton for the swords, but not as much for books.
See, you should, it's my recommendation, you should change that a little bit. But again, going back to the point we mentioned before, there's only so much time in a day. So you have to figure out where you want to focus.
Exactly.
And since you're doing a lot of these face-to-face events, that takes a lot of focus to find them, to apply, to go to them, to work them, to restock. It takes a lot.
Yeah, the thing about, and so this is what I learned about shipping books, because I went to Emerald City Comic Con in 2024. That's up in Seattle. And I sold out. And then I was taking orders. I basically was taking orders that I later would have to ship out once I got home. And I was here, I think I had an additional 40 books that I had to mail. And I was thinking, oh my effing God, this is a chore. This is a chore. And it's like, I was like, and then cha-ching, I see, oh, we just sold a sword that was worth, twice as much as all the books that I sold, and it's just like, and that's like, packing that up is so much easier than packing up 40 books. So yeah, there's that balance. So
yeah,
like
and
I
that's
said,
the thing.
I'm a validation whore, so
Yeah, and you have to find out what everybody has to figure out what is worth it. Is it worth it? Because writing them, especially in the indie publishing, it's hard. It's not an easy route. There are some people that make it look easy, but even for the people who make it look easy, it's a hard business, and it is work. And like you said, depending on what you do, if you have another job, I don't want to dismiss writing and publishing, because that is a job. As you know, it is a job. But selling a sword versus how many books that would equal it does kind of weigh in what hours of the day and how you want to focus on your time. But you just have to find out what's worth it. And for some people, it's the joy of readers. Even if it's one, just escaping into the world you create.
without a doubt, that's the validation side of me. So that was the other half of that. Is like I was here, damn it, one sword did more than this, but at the same time, it's like, well, this reader actually reads my books and enjoys it, then that's actually something that I created. So yeah, there's always that balance.
Yeah, you never know who's gonna listen to you, read your book, be inspired by your story, or who you are, and you could be someone that inspires another writer and their books down the future, and who knows where that ripple effect will end up.
Yeah, that is a consideration. I mean, I have some pretty cool stories, because I'm gonna sound like I'm bragging here, but I do
Don't
have.
brag. I mean, this is all about
Well, I have
you.
this dedicated fan, and she read my series.
Love it.
And then she reached out to me and she says, I really love your series, and I really like how you talked about, a couple that was struggling with infertility, because I'm dealing with that. And that's actually one of the things I treat a lot of in Chinese medicine.
Mhm.
So I told her, well, it's like, well, this is what we do, blah, 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 blah. This is what I do for a living. And I gave her some resources, and she was dealing with recurrent miscarriages.
Mhm.
And I won't take credit, but she did do some of the things I said, and then she had a baby, and she named the baby after one of the characters. And then she had a second baby who she named after the other second character. So at least I have that story.
Hey, there you go. That's one of those things I've always wondered is, how would I feel if someone's like, I've named my child after one of your characters? And I have this I don't know how it would feel until I get in that situation.
Names.
But now you know.
Give me a character. What is one of your characters' names?
Okay, so my debut character is Ueva, but spelled with 2 L's in the front. Ueva Kargan. But I have so many characters throughout, the various book series. I like big casts, so it is kind of fun. And of course, my Nordic one, they're all Old Norse names. They're pulled from history and legends and stuff like that. But yeah, for one of the ones that I created was Ueva.
Well, it was, what is it? During Game of Thrones, everyone loved Daenerys, and so they were naming their children Daenerys, Khaleesi, and then at the end, you're like, oh my God, what did I name my child?
Yeah, maybe wait until the series is done before you decide.
Especially if the author is George R.R. Martin. So.
Yeah. Well, since we're right at the end, and I don't want to keep you too long, let me go ask you: is there any topic you wanted to cover today that you didn't get to have a chance to cover, or any questions you want to ask that you haven't had a chance to ask? Since we're right at the end of it.
I will actually give you not a question. I will say this is one other thing, since we're on this topic of people who have influenced, authors who have influenced their readers. I was at Emerald City Comic Con. Was that? Well, anyway, I was at one con, and then I was just talking to this potential reader, and then she showed me this tattoo, which was a quote from a book by Carissa Broadbent, who was an author, not a close friend, but an author friend of mine. So I was like, let me take a picture of that. And so I took a picture and sent it to Carissa, and she was really tickled by that. But I think it's really cool if you could influence a reader so much that they'd want to tattoo something about you on their body. I mean, that's very permanent. A name change legally.
One of my goals would be to have someone cosplay as one of my characters. So, but the tattoo's a little more permanent. Now, I do have a question that's for you from one of my regulars, and was asking, what is your favorite aspect of world building, since you've been delving in your world for I
like to. I start with a concept and see where it goes from there. And so, for example, in this world, there is like a moon that goes through all of its phases in a single day. And so I thought, what would be the result of that? Like when people down on the surface are looking at this moon and they see it going through all its phases. Number one, they're going to use it to tell time because it's like it's a certain phase of the moon. What mythologies will spring up from that, and then what are all the impacts downstream? So I really like connectivity. That's what I love about
I
world
like
building.
that.
And then also, when you are in the writing process, if you need to solve a problem which creates more world building, it has to fit within the constraint of your world. And if it does fit, sometimes it alters things a little bit. So, for example, this is one of the series. It's different. It's basically a futuristic dystopian story, which I wrote because the magic system wouldn't fit. I had to scratch an itch. And the magic system didn't fit with my regular magic system, so I created a new world. But by the time I was done with it, I realized that there's a way to make that work. And so I do envision maybe possibly my favorite sarcastic, assassin character going to this world and maybe learning this other magic system. So I don't know. Yeah. But
I like
interconnectivity, that is my favorite part of world building.
I absolutely love that. And I have one question. My final question for you is, what is the next event that you're going to be at, and or next couple events that you're going to be at, so people can put them on their calendars if they are in the area?
Probably Gen Con. I'm on the schedule for Gen Con in Indianapolis, which is at the end of July, I believe, and then FanX Salt Lake City, which I believe is the beginning of September. So I think those are the two that I know for sure. I'm going to try to go to New York Comic Con. Dragon Con, maybe not. We'll see.
Well, if you ever come down to Dragon, I will definitely try to say hi to you because I'm always in and around in that author and fantasy space. Because
heck yeah, down at the BarCon, right?
Oh yeah, or that. I've been fortunate that I've gotten to know some of the directors in fantasy and writing, and I'm hoping to meet the one that actually focuses as well this year on high fantasy because there's so many different tracks. But I'll definitely be on panels and everything. So it is always fun to kind of work it, but then be able to meet people at quote unquote BarCon, as you said, afterwards, because they bring in some really cool people from all around the world to that one. Yeah. But as you've gone to some of these other big events, I'm sure you know that, how that is.
Well, Dragon Con is huge. I was there 2 years ago, and that was a crap ton of fun. That was the first time that was the second time I went, but that was the first time I was on panels. And authors are so much fun to be on with panels because number one, a lot of them are really funny. I was on 3 author panels, but then I was on a martial arts weapons panel, and these people took themselves way too seriously. Yeah. I was like, this is like the worst panel I've ever been on, just because all these people, the way that they take themselves so seriously, versus the authors are like self-effacing. They're so much fun. Anyway, yes.
Oh. Well, who knows? Maybe one day we'll be on a panel together. That would be fun.
We can make that happen.
I love this. This is going to be like a goal. I'm going to put this out in the world, and one day I would love to see that happen. But I do want to thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me this past hour. And it's been so fascinating, not just learning about all your books, but all the other things you do. Again, super excited about the sword store. I've made notes because it is now on my bucket list. I will be there one day. But no, just truly, I've enjoyed getting to know you and talk to you, and really do hope that we can meet face to face at some point.
That would be great. And thanks for having me.
And for everybody who's been coming in listening, and I enjoy all you, and happy reading, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye.
See you later. Bye. And I'm going to have to shut this down.